Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. People who have experienced many things and have been willing to share those experiences with us and to give us an idea of what it is that has helped them to gain their sense of belonging. Now, this week, I say most weeks I've got a very special guest, but this week I've got very special guests, plural, because we've got more than one, and they are Baba, Baba and Patrick. I'm going to call them. All right, Baba and Patrick. They This week's edition is specifically focusing on sickle cell and sickle cell patient advocacy. To mark September as Sickle Cell Awareness Month, we thought it would be good for us to have a look at the different aspects of individuals who are advocating on behalf of the sickle cell community, who may be suffering from sickle cell or living with sickle cell, and to see how we can promote this and to get greater awareness. So it's a real pleasure. I'm going to say it's a real pleasure to have both Baba and Patrick here with us this afternoon. So I'm going to ask them to just give us a little brief introduction as to what it is and how it is that they came about to be involved with the sickle cell. Why are they interested in sickle cell? Is what I'm going to ask. Just give us an idea of what it is. We'll start with Baba and then we'll go to Patrick.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Wayne Mitchell. This is an interesting place to be. I'm very honored to be here myself. My name is Baba-Jallah-Epega, and as a marketing executive, I'm very happy and someone who's very much involved in sickle cell awareness and helping to find a condition cure for the condition. My background goes with sickle cell. My relative, actually, his name's Richard Coker, of whom, of course, the Richard Coker Foundation, might be able to see it right behind me. I founded with his mother, but he was born with sickle cell, and he had I suppose for the first 6, 7 years of my life, I actually thought he was my brother because we lived together for so long. And he fought sickle cell very arduously and painfully for 33 years and sadly passed away, technically not from sickle cell, but leukemia. And it was a complication that came after as a result of sickle cell. But that gave me, I suppose, the inspiration to fight the cause and help those with sickle cell. And that's my background is through a relative. You know, we have sickle cell in our family. I'm an AS carrier myself. And yeah, that's how I got into the whole sickle cell awareness campaign.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. So it was a personal experience. Patrick, can you give us an insight as to what it was and how it is that you became involved with sickle cell?
Well, I got involved with Sickle Cell. By the way, good afternoon, all. It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Wayne, to having us. Especially Barbara, which I'm working with and I know very well. I've also known Julie Coker for many, many years. And I'm really honored to be here. And I hope my little insight will help the cause, which is a great cause, I do believe. I would say I started really more or less by accident in a way, because my son was born with sickle cell disorder. And at that time, I never really took much notice when he was born. We were told he would be born with sickle cell disorder, but I was firmly a believer that the NHS, sort of kind of best in the world type of healthcare, would be able to cope with everything and anything, right? And I thought sickle cell, okay, no problem, they'll be able to cope with it. However, when he was first got ill, he was 2 years old. He took him to the local hospital in London, A&E department, which I thought was a crisis. I wasn't sure. To my horror, the the doctor in A&E didn't know anything about sickle cell. He never heard about sickle cell. And I think he saw my surprise because he called a nurse and asked her if she heard about sickle cell. And she never heard about it. So I was left absolutely dumbfounded. And the result was they gave us 200 ml of Calpol and said, look, if it's not better by tomorrow, bring it back. So I took him for 3 days consecutively, and the same thing happened. He was in pain. And on, I think, fourth or fifth day, he actually showed some symptoms, which a big, huge bump on his ankle. And at that time, it seemed the pain had gone. And he was still poorly, but within a few days after that, he was back to normal self again. But I was horrific. That experience was really, really, to me, so bad that from then on, every time he was ill, I looked after myself. And he had a crisis literally every month. And the crisis lasts for 5 to 7 days. In that time, all I did was give him Calpol, and he would be relatively pain-free for about half an hour, maybe an hour. But for the next few hours, again, end up crying or whatever. I looked after him, and we looked after him and I took him, really kept him out of hospital and looked after him for about 3 or 4 years. But in that time, I did my own research, went to the only hospital I knew, which was Central Mid at the time, to find out all about sickle cell. I spoke to the community nurses. They had quite a bachelor, and they were very helpful. And I learned a lot from them, and I learned a lot from books and just children talking about. And I built my own way of trying to care for my son. And I think the best thing I did really after a few years was to have a diary, a detailed diary. And from that, I learned a lot about my son, what to do and what not to do. And actually, up to this day, we still have a diary. I gave the ownership up to him when he was about 18, 20. And he kept that diary. And we built what the do's and the don'ts. And that helps greatly as we progress. But that's how I got involved with Sickle. And I must add one thing, though, because the fact that I really only thought I'll be able to look after my son for maybe 2 or 3 years. And after that, I'll crack it and I could go back to work again. Because at that particular time, I was in between contracts. I was an engineer working overseas, a sort of engineer working in the Middle East. And I really, really, as I, begin a career which I wanted, I worked 10 years to achieve. And I had freedom and had to work wherever I want to in the world, and also on a great deal of money. And all of a sudden, from that, to end up looking after my son with very little money, and then afterwards, no money at all. But it was a challenge. But I think my son was the priority, and I continue up to today.
Thank you. Thank you for being so frank and honest about the situation, and what it is that has brought you to this stage of doing the work about advocacy. I want to just, I think to myself, and Baba, you mentioned about it being your cousin, but your brother, right? As far as he was your brother, yeah. And going through those experiences with him, seeing and observing. What was it like for you as an onlooker? I think, Patrick, you kind of like stemmed on it, but as onlookers, right? What was it that you tried to do to help to alleviate or to remedy? How did it make you feel? How did it impact on you?
Wow, that's a good question, because I think this goes back even I'm telling my age here now, about 40 years, 45 years, when we went to school in a place called Tunbridge Wells. We were boarders. We both went quite young. I think I went to that school at the age of 6.5, 7. It was a lovely school in Tunbridge Wells, Homewood House it's called. And at that time, 40 odd years ago, 45 years ago, we were Africans, Nigerians in the freezing autumnal countryside, but the teachers weren't very savvy or understanding of sickle cell. So sticky blood, as everyone knows, with the transfusions needed and, the time every month when everything seizes up and hell comes in for sickle cell patients. I'd already understood that. But in our school, especially some of our masters, they didn't understand that. And they thought Richard was lazy. They didn't understand the blood, that he needed liquids all the time, hydrating, etc. So they were like, why do you need liquid? Why are you doing this? Why are you weaker than everyone else? His eyes were yellow, it showed. But they didn't understand. They were thinking that he was trying to get out of school, and they started giving him punishment. So personally, I had to fight them. I had to say, no, he's sick. What are you doing? And he was going in and out of hospital. They thought he was slow, intelligence-wise. But he was a very smart kid. He just went through hell, to be honest. And through our age up to 13, I always had to fight for him. I always had to say, no, you don't understand. And it was something it wasn't even, it was ignorance. So, being a combatant in that way has always been in my blood. And my personal experience seeing him, he was in film, he was a great script writer, he was a good videographer, he was an aspiring comic writer. This was about 30 years ago, before Marvel Comics and all the likes came into fruition through films. He was like, they're going to make films about it. They're going to make films. He collected a whole library of comics. So I became his champion. We worked together. We would find with my sisters as well, and family, and his mum, who was Miss Julie Koiko, who was in the limelight, of course, being the first Miss West Africa, Western Nigeria at that time, technically. And being the first Angela Rippon, if anyone remembers her, of Nigeria. She was a newscaster as well. So I always found that I saw him in pain all the time, and I thought he was a superhero. I know recently we've just been watching Super Cells about kids with sickle cell and having it as a strain, as a superpower. But I think people with sickle cell are superheroes, because I used to call him Le Coeur de Lion, which is Lionheart, because he was Richard, the Lionheart. And that's my experience. It was always pain for him, and I couldn't physically help him, but I had to champion him all the time, make excuses. But it wasn't an excuse. And I had to say, hey, this is an excuse. This is a health reality. But later on, as you said, Patrick, with NHS, there's been more understanding. But I knew that my mission would be to make people, both patients, public, and both triply health providers, more aware about the sickle cell condition.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Richard the Lionheart. I love that, right? But you recognized that it wasn't a stereotype which the masters, as you called them, wanted to put on him. He's lazy, he's this, he's that. You understood the condition. You understood the condition better than they did. And
I did.
Yeah.
And I was a kid.
And you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was a similar thing which you also highlighted, Patrick, that when you went into the hospital, the doctor and the nurses prescribed Calpol as a treatment, because they didn't know. So part of the issue that I know it's moved on since then, but it was that clear lack of understanding of the implications of what sickle cell, the educational part of raising the awareness of what sickle cell actually looks like in the community. Okay, so I understand, I hear that personal experience. So how have both of you kind of like used that platform or that experience? Because there's many people who have individuals who they know with sickle cell, but yet we don't necessarily hear their voices in advocacy. What was it that got you interested in saying, well, Baba, you've already told us from as long as you can remember, you were advocating for your brother Richard. I'm going to call him your brother, right? If you allow me, I'm going to call him your brother Richard, right? Yeah,
Please.
right. You were advocating for him, so you from very early on, Patrick, your son, you gave up a lot. Tell us.
You see, at the time, it didn't, I really was only a temporary thing because I knew I could always go back at that time, feel, go back to my profession. So I was willing to give up a little while. I mean, a matter of up to 5 years, I thought, and still maintain my talents to go back. But however, my focus was to look after him as well as I possibly could, right? That was my focus. But very shortly it changed because I got sort of persuaded to join a local support group. And I found that everyone there was struggling similar to I was, right? And so, although I didn't really want to join, it took me a while. I mean, lucky for one particular individual, he kept on inviting me and inviting me because I was so focused and just look after my son, do what I need to get back to earn some money. But then once I joined the group, it changed me after a while because I thought, hey, we had a huge problem. And so I got really involved with the support group and became a chair. Um, and I felt dealing with the healthcare system was interesting at first, and interesting in a way that it was more complicated, I felt, than the journey I've had so far. Because, I mean, I said I work overseas, but the journey was a hard one. To get a black man, with all due respect, to work as an expatriate, right? To work overseas. It took me about 4 years of about, must be 100 interviews.
Wow.
I was fortunate, and why I got interviews because my name is Patrick Ojeer, and I was always, there was always shock when I entered the interview room. All right. So I always had interviews, but never. It took me about 4 years to go. So I knew this sort of underlying issues which I wouldn't deal with now. So I thought I start working with support group, and unfortunately now things happened, like Northwest London Clinical Network came about, and I did as a chair, did a presentation, invited me to the group, and I must admit, and that helped a great deal. And I met this wonderful lady, Mabel Ali, and she actually did a work on me to keep me interested in ongoing doing meetings and things like that. Um, and although I wasn't really interested because I was always focused on getting back to work, but she sort of got to me in many ways and sort of coerced me to do lots of things against my really personal judgment. But I did get into it, and I found that network as well. And then she coerced me to get involved with London Specialized Commissioning. Okay, because they felt this advocacy role there because they had a PPI role there, and that was I felt very interesting the way I could actually make a difference. And again, it's collaboration because that was represented with other diseases, and I find especially those the organization and the members of people with AIDS, I found them tremendously knowledgeable of how the system works and tremendously helpful and willing to collaborate. And I really think I felt could have made something happen, and I did with the help of others, which is how sickle cell being a specialized domain. So I worked hard for that, and I thought that was a great achievement, and I could leave then. However, soon after that, I found that although it was on the domain, it wasn't going to be nationally commissioned because how the system worked, right? The system worked. You had X amount of diseases on what they call the national definition set, and from that set of diseases, it could be commissioned, but it's not automatic. you still have to find one of the areas to commission, and London Specialized Commission wasn't prepared to do so, although was really trying to work as hard for them to do so. But then again, after that, the 2012 bill came, which really was fantastic for sickle cell, because the change came back where all the diseases had to be commissioned and the same level nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that was good. And I worked on that. And that created the clinical reference group, which was a body to bring about policies, national policies. And that again make a great deal of difference, because and then I tried to formulate the best I can from a specialized London Specialized Commission perspective, because they had expertise, they had a commission, and I learned from them how best I could help the group. And that, I mean, most of the policies, national policies now, has been developed by the clinical reference group. And so therefore that make a really huge difference.
Wow.
That's the, you know, it's almost like you, I'm not going to say you stumbled into it, but it's almost like you were coerced and pulled, kicking and screaming, but it's bore fruit in the things which you've been able to do. So I'm gonna ask Baba at this moment though, because you set up a foundation. Okay, you set up a foundation, so it's a slightly different approach which you've adopted. Yeah. So tell me about what it is. What does your foundation do? How do you support people with sickle cell, or what is it that? Give us a flavor of your foundation, please.
Okay, thanks, Doc. I think with the Richard Coker Foundation, going a little bit back, as I said, Richard had passed away. Previous to that, I'd been working in the city. I used to trade interest rate swaps, futures, options. I was right in the heart of Londinium City, and I'd spent a good time in City, West End. Richard and I had always worked on finding finance for his films, and I'd always been working with him personally, individually, advocating his life and work. But when he passed away 20 years ago, his mother, who, as I said, was also on the silver screen, as we used to call it. She was an actress, a singer, a presenter. We felt that we wanted to do something. He couldn't just die. This kid that had loved children as well. He had cousins and we had cousins, and he's always had nephews on his side as well that he looked after. Sickle cell seemed to be a bit of a taboo, especially being Nigerian myself. It had been a taboo. It was hidden away. People thought it was something to do with faith, not fate. It wasn't a science. It was God had given them something burden to carry. So I wanted to burst that bubble. And I felt with Richard's mum that we should start something. And my sisters as well, JJ and Yuan, they felt we should start something. This was back in 2004 now. We need to continue this young man's life. So we said, let's start a foundation. We didn't, it's only even now we're looking at charitable status, but let's start a foundation. I always had this knack of finding money in a strange way, of finding money from people who had money and putting it in the right place. I suppose they saw my integrity and conviction of what I did, and honesty came through. So we had so many different people say, listen, how can we help? How can we help? And I thought, how can we help? So the Richard Coker Foundation, I suppose our remit, aims and goals is to help underprivileged kids in urban areas, for one, to support research into the condition and the cure. That's what we're looking for, obviously. And that's why this Imperial Sickle Cell group is so important. We're collaborating with yourselves in the Imperial College or in the university, London University, University College, in Brunel College, working with different entities and report groups. But I straddle continents as well. I live in London, Lagos, and it's something that working with the World Sickle Cell News and World Reports newspaper, Mr. Ayo in Lagos, in Nigeria, we have an African forum. that all sickle cell entities in Africa, we speak to ourselves in a group about what's going on, this being Sickle Cell Awareness Month. I felt I could punch, a bit above my weight because I was in England, and I felt that I could bring the awareness, but also money. If you have £100 in England, it's like £1,000 in Nigeria. Yeah. And Nigeria being the highest population of African descent people in the world, we have a lot of sickle cell there. But then there was a correlation with thalassemia. I had Greek friends and Arab friends, Middle Eastern friends who said, we've got this sickness of the hemoglobin deficiency of some sin. It's the same, it's just a different name. One's in Greek, one's in English. Sickle cell thalassemia. So I felt that I had support from all genres, all ethnicities for sickle cell. So the Richard Coker Foundation said, okay, we're going to do something here. We're going to help get money from great companies, foundations as well, like the A.G. Leventis Foundation, great supporter of ours, FCMB, which is First City Monument Bank in Nigeria, Alliance Française as well in Africa. And here we're working with new, supporters. Let's get some money to give to kids who have sickle cell, their families, find some palatable way for them to get food packages, eye operations, working on bringing awareness in schools. We go to schools and talk about genotype screening. What that means is, find out what your blood type is and understand if you're AS, SS, etc. Funnily enough, I'd done so many of these campaigns that I'd never blood tested myself. And one day, 2 months before I was going to get married, my wife, Helen, who is a great lady, she wrote the world's first pidgin English opera. She's a composer. But we went to one of these campaigns in a school, and the Genotype Foundation people said, have you tested yourself? I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm a big round man. I don't have any problem. But then I tested AS. And my wife, who'd always told me, my betrothed at the time, that she was AS, we both realized we're both AS and we're getting married. And we were like, ooh la la. And in some societies, people are like, oh, you can't marry an AS. You would know that you have sickle cell children. But we believed. And with NHS, we got tested before. And even if our child was going to have sickle cell, we have 2 beautiful daughters now. We were going to go ahead, we said. We'll go ahead. And we had 2 daughters who are AS. So for me, the campaign was real personal, as well as with my cousin, practical. But we, as the Richard Coker Foundation, want to expand the awareness of sickle cell. We want to collaborate, bring it to people, the public, help health providers understand more, and help patients feel they're not alone. We do have people helping you. We can uplift you out of poverty, let's say, because some sickle cell, most of them, can't work consistently. So people think, oh, they're not good at, undervalued units, or so capitalism as we are, but it's not capitalism the problem. I'm just saying they're not consistent. So we help them, and that's what we do at Richard Coker Foundation. Help the needy with sickle cell links to them or their families in Africa and in Europe.
Baba, that's amazing. That's really is amazing. There's one part which really, all of it was really good, but there was one part which kind of like got me thinking, right? When you said about you hadn't been tested, and your response was kind of like, yeah, but I'm a big man, right? I'm a strapping man, right? and why I say that is I wonder how many within our community also take on that kind of mentality to say, I don't need to be tested, right? And so in not being tested, we could be unknowingly passing on. I'm not saying that it's bad to have it, but if you can take precautions, if you can take steps to mitigate, or to be prepared, is what I'm saying. And so I suppose I don't know if that's part of how you also advocate in the awareness element. Tell us a little bit more, both Patrick and Baba.
I mean, I think it's really very important, if not essential, to have this own, like we have now, national screening program. right? I think it's good to know, right? It's to know. It not necessarily means you will take a negative action about it, but to be aware and to be aware what's about and what that would automatically draw you to find out more about this sickle cell disorder. And that is what, and to be prepared, or shall I say better prepared for in the eventuality of that happening, and also where it does even more to understand others who've got this condition, right? And as you know, sort of knowledge is a powerful tool if used correctly. And it's about understanding your neighbor, to helping your neighbor. And that is what I think the screening program and to know is all about. It's not about necessarily people use up to have an abortion or anything else, but for so many other things. And also by data, the numbers, you could then maybe influence change it in our health system to cater not only from clinicians, but also on the community element, on the social element, and also you be wider to cater in employment industries. Let them be aware of these things. I mean, one thing that Baba said about Richard, you know, he said he was tired a lot of time, right? You need certain things like a lot of drinks, and also the retention of urine is not very great. So therefore, you need to go to the toilet quite a lot more. These are sort of standard thing for a sickle cell person. However, it's not really standard for the population itself. And instead of looking down upon that, you should be able to accommodate that, because there's nothing much to accommodate that for, but it makes a huge difference. And another thing is that with every sickle cell person, including my son, they've always got this keenness about them to be normal. Normal. Now, I've always had many discussions with my son and said, what is normal? I'm not normal because I've got X, Y, and Z. But I understand where they come from. And doing these little things to understand them more and accommodate them more will, I think, go a long, long way to make them feel more comfortable and help them be in what they call many more normal than they think they would otherwise be. So there's lots to do, I think.
I think you're right. It's talking about the advocacy. Thank you, Patrick. The screening, when you become personally involved in something, I think the Americans say, "You feel me?" That's how they say it. You feel me? When you feel like I realized I was AS, I thought, wow, this is something. It just changed. I don't know how you can describe it, but even though I'd always been an advocate, and this happened 10 years ago, and it impassioned me even more. I know it sounds, it's a human thing. If you have a personal condition or part of the condition, or you're personally in the campaign, you have some kind of different mental awareness of it. And I felt that if I could get people to understand that themselves and speak on that, screenings, or when we go to schools, test yourself. As you said, Patrick, it's not that you don't, oh, no, it's a bad thing to have. But knowledge is power, quite simply. And I found it was very powerful that I had it and I could relay it to other people to communicate. Screen yourself, find your genotype. Even for blood transfusions or blood donation, it's also good to know. And this is something that we're championing. I think we'll discuss later on. But your personal story is important for this, and that's where I was coming from with it. So yeah.
Thank you for that, both of you. I'm going to come back to something which kind of like you both mentioned in slightly different ways, in terms of Patrick, you mentioned that when you were looking after your son, you started to maintain a diary. You started to look at patterns, and even just now where you were talking about the fact that having to have lots of fluid and the fluid retention isn't good and things like that. And so thinking about the reasonable adjustments, because Baba, you also mentioned about the fact that actually because of the illness, it means that working practices or the opportunity for employment becomes, it's almost like a vicious cycle of impoverishedness, both health impoverished and potentially financially impoverished because you can't go out to work. Whereas, so my connecting part here is that from the diary entries which you made, which you were then saying, this appears to be a trigger. What kind of mechanisms could you then, or adaptations could you make to the work environment or to how you treat yourselves or how we treat people with sickle cells, which would enable them to not necessarily say that I have to be normal, but we get them more included in the process? Does that make sense? It's kind of a long question, but how do we get them more included?
If I may say, what you're getting at, I understand, but also why you can't be clear, because you are perfectly right, Wayne, because you were struggling to actually find a clear question.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what sickle cell disorder it is. There's no two individuals are the same. So you got to have that open-mindedness. You know what basically could happen, but you got to have that sort of space to make adjustments because it's not rigid, right? So therefore, a better understanding, and that would be by the data and by screening and what the healthcare professional would advise. But on top of that, you got to have that little space that something else may manifest itself, and something else you got to deal with. And when you have that open-mindedness of not being too specific and not being exact, because most of our disease exact. You gave this medication and everything be fine, and you do, and everyone the same virtually, sort of production line thing. Sickle cell is every individual are different, and you've got to accommodate that, and you've got to make space for that, built in a medical way, mentally, and really practically. And then you begin to understand. When you could do that, then I think every sickle cell person will have that confidence and feel comfortable. And also one of the underlying issues that affects every sickle cell person, that stress factor. And when you are in a safer place, you're less likely to suffer stress.
You're right. That's I mean, just to buttress your points there. As you said, Patrick, it's about giving space to patients or people with the condition, let's say. When we were at school, my mother, dear soul, rest in peace, Baba-Jallah-Epega, she came to school to talk about sickle cell. And I think I was about 12, and I was just bursting with pride. My mum dressed up, talking about sickle cell, what it was. And there's one of the main protagonist teachers, as we called him, he was actually a master of the house. That's why they called him. And he said, I didn't know that they needed to go to toilets as much. So I understand Richard more. So teachers watched that presentation my mum gave almost 30 years ago, or 40 years actually ago almost. It changed their mind. So what happened, the practicability of it, or practicality in English, was that my people like Richard were allowed to wear long trousers. We used to wear shorts in the winter sometimes. We would go running before breakfast and then have cold showers. This was a real old school boarding school. He didn't have to do that, and a couple of others didn't have to do that because they were clinically, sickle cell. And he would wear gloves in the classes. Plumbing back in those days wasn't great, and he was allowed to do that. He was allowed to work sometimes in bed, and that kind of translated for me with the understanding with the Richard Coker Foundation of how to translate that into the workplace. Luckily now, because of flexible working, 3-4 days a week, working from home, it's changed. But once you give someone an opportunity to work and you test them, obviously it's a testing of your intellect or experience, adaptability to the job, of course, but people were more empathetic sickle cell condition holders because they understood that, okay, it doesn't mean they're stupid, it just means they're sick. But their brain creatively, that's why you see a lot of them in the creative industry, because that doesn't have that 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. So it's given room. You mentioned inclusivity. Of course, DEI is the big thing: diversity, equality, I think, and inclusivity. We look at different perspectives of inclusivity, but what we're trying to do is spotlight it on people with sickle cell and the sickle cell and thalassemia conditions, which is coming through yourselves, eminent doctors like yourself. You're a molecular, obviously genetics and immunology specialist, as you are, Dr. Mitchell. You understand it. So it's translating what you understand, working with people like Patrick and myself, who advocates, whether I'm in marketing executive and Patrick works in commissions and organizations, and merging this so we can get that information out to the public and for the public to have receivership and ownership as well. Because once you get ownership, then people start helping. And that's what we've been doing.
You know what? I love the way that you articulate that. I'm going to say it because one of the things which I think is key from what you've said, and it's been a constant theme throughout, for me anyhow, is the idea about gaining better education around what sickle cell is. Not making assumptions, but having clear, better understanding. The illustration which you gave of when your mum came into the school, yeah, and the teacher then recognizing, oh, that's why Richard needs to be going to the toilet, yeah. So now I'm giving that accommodation now, but before, oh, he's just trying to bunk off class.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same with you, Patrick, in terms of that idea of the advocacy has to be informed.
Yes.
It has to be informed about what it is and for it to be effective. Yeah. So I'm just wary of time. Time is going so quickly. I don't know if others have questions, but there's still a few things which I want to try to unpack and to discover. In terms of your advocacy portfolio, right? And where are your priorities? How do you prioritize what it is that you're going to be doing and moving forward with, right? Because there's so many things which we've already touched on. There's the education piece, there's the accommodation piece. How do you prioritize and get people in to be listening and to effect change?
Look, Wayne, as you know, you are very skilled and experienced, knowledgeable. Not only are you very much a lecturer, but you're a researcher. And every research you get involved in, there's one essential thing, Wayne, and that is, and you've got to make it as clear, as simple as you possibly can, and that is the aim. And forever, since I started what advocacy work and be involved with sickle cell, I've always had a very simple aim. It hasn't changed. My priorities haven't changed. And that aim is to make a better service, or the best service possible. That's all with those with sickle cell. So what you do, in the landscape you're at the moment in time, you just do the best you can. You're meandering like a river going down where the opportunity you feel could help. Sometimes you got to take one step backwards, but overall your aim is the same. And keep you going. And even when you reach certain levels and you think, wow, you can't, this is good, but you can't leave it. You just got to continue along the way, because, you might take 2 or 3 steps upwards, but you haven't got there yet. So you just keep on, make sure that that aim is clear and working towards that aim. And that is really what I've been doing. in every way. I mean, I could see now, take for example now, to being here, knowing the tremendous new um, uh, group start the Imperial Sickle Cell group with Professor Julie, Dr. Stephen Coley, and others. You know, this again, they bring a freshness about them that you clearly, and that's why Baba is here. We're both in that organization, that group, and we could see clearly that will make a difference. And the difference will make us, to me, closer to the aim.
That's one thing. Perfect. I mean, just backing you up on that. I know we haven't got much time. I'll be quick. I'm a harnesser. I bring people together. I bring things together and make them productive. And as Patrick said, you know, working, meeting Professor Julie McCartney and into the Imperial Sickle Cell group, as we all are, and meeting Dr. Stephen Okoli and yourself, Wayne, and there's a few others like Fee and Rotunda, and all the people in the group that we know, don't have to name them, but how my focus is to how do we bring ourselves together through the Sickle Cell Society as well, bringing them in with Imperial College, Queen Mary College I went to, King's College, all the universities and the hospitals as well, University College, Imperial, all the hospitals. How do we raise awareness? How do we encourage blood donation? That's my holy grail in this. It's a day-by-day thing, of course, but how, for me, I'm a Nigerian, I go back and forth to Nigeria for work all the time. Every month I'm there. I can't give blood because I go to Sub-Sahara. It's a tropical place. You might bring a disease back. How do I change that with the institutions, the NHS? There must be a way. If they test my blood and see, oh, he's all right, I can give blood. It's one step away from that. So they say, oh, Africans don't give blood, or people of African descent don't give blood. But why is that? Is it a social, economic, or practical thing? And that's what I want to get into, because transfusions are very important. Promote research, as you're doing. How do we link patients with health providers like yourself? Not just to give them, you know, come in, give me your blood, let me see, but the depth. You've talked of cystic fibrosis before, and the depth of research has gone into that, and the reports coming out of that. How do I help bring all of that together? I think that's my mission. It's quite hard.
Can I add something here, Wayne? And the thing is, and what is coming more and more to the forefront, the importance of having a strong patient voice, right? That is coming more and more to the forefront, right? But for us to be, the stronger the patient voice is, the more likely there'll be improvements. But therefore, you can't take it as that, because you've got to educate the patient voice and educate them to have a strong voice. And because the complexity of the healthcare system, you've got commissions, you've got clinicians, you've got managers, you've got nurses, you've got social workers, you all speaks a different language, even yourself, with all due respect, all right? And so therefore, you have got, as a patient advocate, you've got to be able to be multilingual. To be, first of all, because these are professionals who've gone on some for hundreds of years. They have established their use, they established their role. Now you've got to try and break those barriers, and you've got to speak their language. And unless you could be able to do so, you wouldn't be able to influence them. You wouldn't be able to have a meaningful conversation. So therefore, to enable to get a stronger patient voice, you also need, and all of us could be influenced to influence, and all of us are capable of doing that. But we have got to have a better training program for patient advocates. So therefore, they could represent the community to be able to really utilize that strong voice to bring about change and improvements.
Thank you. Wow. You know what? There's so much synergy between what the two of you are saying, right? So much. That the idea of enhancing, the idea of harnessing the community, right? And the various communities that you have to transect, and communicate with, and to change opinions, and all of that stems from, I think, as kind of like has been highlighted throughout, is better understanding, better knowledge, better education. So whether it's education from the point of view of scientific research or policy procedures, etc., the educating the people both within the community and those who are making decisions about the community is really, and I see both Baba and Patrick, I see you guys kind of like working between, you guys are the conduits between working. So that to me is your advocacy, is actually putting your foot into many different worlds, understanding and then communicating it effectively to the patient groups. You go back and you tell them what the policymakers are saying. To the policymakers, you tell them what the patients are saying, so that everybody is now speaking one language. Yeah, it's interesting, Baba, that you mentioned your wife Helen, who first pidgin English, pidgin Petlay, yeah?
Yes.
And why
That's
I
right,
say that is because for some who would hear that, they wouldn't necessarily understand, but it's a way of communicating what a culture, so somebody else could understand that culture. Yeah. And that's what you guys, I believe, are doing. Yeah. So I'm just wary. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I normally do leave a little time for questions. If anyone does, just raise your hand and I'll come to you very quickly. If not, then what I would ask, right, because both of you have been, hand came up straight away, man. I didn't even get time to. All right, we'll go to Rotunda, but I also want you to think about, right, we've got several. All right, Rotundu, sorry. Could you ask your question and then?
Yes, I just wanted to say this was a really interesting talk. So thank you so much, Patrick and Baba, for sharing your experiences. I was wondering, how can researchers work best with patient advocates to sort of I don't know, to like have to be more effective in the research that we conduct? How can we work together in the most efficient and effective way?
Patrick, I think that's your.
Well, firstly, for you got to be invited to these research. I mean, there's several groups. I mean, you've got Imperial group, you've got West London PPV group, Specialized Commissioning group. You've got Sickle Cell Society. It's really, I think it's a great question because from a researcher, I think you're then reaching out, and that doesn't happen very often, and it should happen more. You're reaching out to the community and said, okay, let's work together. That's what you're saying. Okay, so you've got to reach out. I wouldn't say at the present time there's a direct link, but it's good that you're reaching out. And there's so many organizations. As I said, the Sickle Cell Society is one. You've got the PPV group for West London.
What does PPV stand for? You should tell me.
Public and Patient Voice group, and also you got the Imperial Sickle Cell group. I mean, from them, you'll find, like most of us advocates, we all have our own individual network around us. So as you see us as individuals, but we really some with bigger and smaller network than others, but all of us got a network arrangement. So therefore, by contacting us individually or those organizations, they always certainly will have somebody who's interested to help you along. And that'd be great because they help to shape your research.
I think in one word, collaboration, and another word, communication. What do you need to help your research? We can find it for you with the patients. And we become the centrifuge, to use one of your scientific terms. We can turn liquid to gas, and we can turn your articulation into something that's palatable to the patients and vice versa. And that's how we see ourselves.
Yep.
Thank
you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Yeah. And then I've got another one from Sickle Cell News. and World Reports. That's an interesting name. So Sickle Cell, if you're on, thanks.
Hi, Ayo.
Yeah, my name is Ayola Olajide. I am the editor of Sickle Cell News and World Report. And we've been working in close collaboration all over Nigeria with the Richard Coker Foundation for more than 12 years now.
Wow.
I really want to thank the foundation for being so helpful. By the way, I live with sickle cell myself, and I am the president of a sickle cell organization in my locality here in Nigeria, in Lagos State. My question is, how does lived experiences, I'm talking to Patrick now, I'm asking Patrick, how does lived experiences and stronger patient voices help to improve understanding and acceptance of the sickle cell condition, not just in Africa, but around the world?
Look, it's such an important element, and unfortunately, organizations and the national organization hasn't emphasized the importance of this as much as they should do. And I'll give an example. Last week, I listened to a very good event, which was broadcast from Washington. And it was one of the longest events I think I've been in, but it was fascinating. It was over 5 hours. And we had all policymakers from different areas of Africa, from India, from UK, and of course, America. And they talk about the stem cell and gene therapy, all the research that worked with them and how they got to promote. But the takeaway from that was from a patient. And I would say that, and the takeaway really, not because the patient highlights something that they, I'm sure, will never really seriously consider. And this patient had the gene therapy transplantation, and his life changed overnight. But there was no sort of no plan for the post effect of that intervention, and that affected him greatly. So therefore, that was a great takeaway from all, because it was mentioned several times in the panel, right? And also the hopes and wish and desires of the patient himself, where he could see it going. So therefore, you could see the importance of having patient at all levels in to deal with sickle cell care or sickle improvement or sickle cell, in whether in healthcare, research, or policy making. It's essential to have appropriate advocacy in all levels of sickle cell. And it highlights time and time again. That little example happens, I see an evidence all the time in every aspect. So therefore, that's where I see it's going. And it's got to, the voice will have to be strong. And the stronger it is, the better improvements I feel will achieve.
I'm going to just start to wrap up now, because our time has been spent, and I think it's been well spent. I know I could sit down and listen to Patrick and Baba, and there's many discussions that we've already had. I'm going to ask the final question to you both. What, if there was one thing that you could, from your advocacy, that you would like to see implemented, changed, what would it be?
For me, simple, is to have that role on every structure in organization regarding to sickle cell care, from the NHS board to all the other groups, like even the specialist commissioning, specialist centers. We have 10 in UK. All the boards ought to have a supportive PPV group accepted on the structure and supported 100%, so they could integrate and become an equal partner throughout. And that is one thing I would like to see come about?
Well, quickly, I'll be looking at, let's all do more testing, more blood donation or for transfusions, and Imperial Sickle Cell Group, join us. We're on LinkedIn, hear about what's going on in sickle cell, and just play a part. Let's come together.
Both of you are talking about unity within our community.
I like that. It's like a rap.
Right. It's time we unite together. Yeah, if we're gonna that patient public and patient voice, right? That coming together is what we need. If we're gonna affect change, the only way that we're gonna do it is by working together. Yeah. So really, I think that this has been an amazing event, and I just want to, if people didn't know, and I'm going to reiterate it again, this is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. But for people living with sickle cell, it's not just a month, it's every single day of their lives. Yeah. But if we can use this month to raise that awareness and to start the conversation and get into the spaces which people haven't been in before, then I think that that's a good thing. So I want to just say a big thank you to both Patrick and to Baba for sharing their passion, right? Their fun, but their sense of purpose with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wayne, for the opportunity, and I thank you very much indeed. And we'll keep in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I'm gonna just say who well, actually, I'm gonna be cheeky, right? Because it was just when we were talking, I normally have guests lined up. And my guest for next week wasn't until they were, because they joined the conversation here. So next week, we're gonna have Sickle Cell News and World Reports.
Oh,
be our special guest. For the simple reason, oftentimes, for me as someone from the UK, I understand sickle cell from a UK perspective. But what does sickle cell look like from other countries in the world? And so let's have that conversation. What's the impact of different localities? What does that look like? So we're going to have that conversation next week, and we're going to focus on that throughout. But I'm going to just say another really big thank you to Baba and to Patrick. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you very much, Wayne.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great job. Thanks a lot.
It's really great. I'm going to just show my final closing slide, and then that will be it for us for this week. So let me share.
One weekend. Thank you, Odaro. Thanks, man. Take care.
I've lost my thing. Oh. All right. My sharing. This one. Sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place.
You found it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great job. Thank you. I know this isn't your day job. We appreciate it. Thank you. So if you have missed any of the other episodes, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. And I also want to, in terms of, I'm gonna say it proud. Our book, The Black PhD Experience, is now out. It came out on Monday, and it charts the experiences of 27 wonderful young Black PhD students and their journeys and the insights which they have gained through that experience. So please, if you have the time, it's an incredible read.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to say, I just clicked on the code, and it's saying that it's been disabled. So I would like to have a look at the book. If you could share it with the group, that would be great.
I will. I'll put the. I don't know why it's disabled. I will sort that out. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. And I just want to say a big thank you to Patrick and to Baba for sharing their experiences and joining these wonderful people who have already shared their experience and are looking at how they are gaining a sense of belonging. In this one, it was more of a collective understanding of how we can help others find their sense of belonging in a world which often misunderstands them. So again, I want to just say a very big thank you for everybody to come, and have a wonderful weekend. Okay.
Take care.
So take care and
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.